Grab your whip, put on your fedora, and get ready to join the quest for the Ark as we celebrate the Steven Spielberg classic, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast, the premier home for music and movie podcasting. Is that correct, Eric?
I think so.
I usually say it's the best destination or whatever, but I think we're going to move up to premier now.
Well,
I think it's time to up the vocabulary.
Okay. He
We've
sets
got
the
it- we've
bar
got it-
high, always, as always.
We've got a teacher with us, so I feel the need to up my vocabulary skills. And he's kind of judged. I feel like I'm being judged if I don't say the right type of thing. So I'm going to bump it up to premier.
The look
place.
on Sean's face says it all. There you go.
He was watching. He was kind of like nodding, like, yeah, you better.
You got the
better.
nod of approval.
That's
You got
that
it.
excited look.
Yeah, that was. Oh goodness! Thank you
We
so
got a
much.
smile
for
out
joining
of him
us.
anyway.
Yeah,
there
he
you
did.
go.
He smiled. He smiled. Hopefully, he won't freeze up like he did the last time. He had a goofy face for the whole episode. He's like frozen. So, thank you for joining us each week on the 3324 podcast. If you're new, welcome aboard. There's a whole bunch of episodes that you can plow through, pick and choose. You don't have to go in numerical order, but we highly suggest you get to them all. And then do the next step is, if you like it, share it with somebody and spread the word on what we call the little podcast that could as well. That would be great. You can find us on social media at 3324 podcast. That'll be on Instagram and Facebook. Let's get to it. We've got people, this is his second time on, and each time there's a technical difficulty. So I don't know if it's the level of hardware he's using or he's trying to get me to get him a new computer. I don't know if this is like a conspiracy with him, but Jerry Sullivan, welcome back.
Thank
Your
you.
second appearance.
Yes, thank you very much.
Not likely to be a Jack Nicholson impression in this episode, but I cannot guarantee it.
Well, okay.
Cannot guarantee it. Although there might be.
Oh, no.
We'll get to it. Also joining us in his great Metallica t-shirt that he bought from the Within Our Hands Foundation, supporting Metallica and their philanthropic endeavors. Sean Grady, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Rocking the 3324 podcast hat as well. He's getting mileage out of it. He is getting the mileage out of it. We appreciate that. Last but certainly not least, frequent collaborator on the show. She's got a poster that she's holding up promoting something. I don't know what she's promoting. Is that something? I don't know what you're promoting there.
Oh, look at that.
Level 92
night of-
Films, an evening of short film 3. She's holding up a poster for you that are not watching on YouTube. She's scrolling through all these different short films that were screened a veritable lifetime ago. Christy Cuomo, welcome aboard.
Oh, and I hung up.
Oh, come on.
And there goes the camera.
Always a pleasure.
That was smooth.
And done.
It was perfect until it wasn't.
No, that was a perfect.
You're my IT person.
That's how you end a conversation in a podcast.
And bring the camera down again, and then you'll be fine. You need to reset. There you go. Now she's ready. Christy, thank you so much for joining us. While she resets, let's talk about it. We're going to be talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be confused with a film that's got a similar title, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
God,
I don't know. I'm not sure what that film is. But we're going to be talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark in this episode, right, Eric?
That's why did you even bring that up?
I had to because it pisses me. It pisses
pisses me off too. Yeah. It makes no sense whatsoever.
The film has been informally retitled as Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark to fit in with the other sequels. But when you watch the film, it still says Raiders of the Lost Ark. So they didn't George Lucas it and go back and change the actual title in the film. But for some reason, when you buy it or you rent it on Prime, it's called Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Stupid.
Is George Lucas a verb now?
I totally agree.
Dean?
Totally agree.
Say again?
George Lucas is a verb now?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a descriptor. We didn't George Lucas this film,
Meaning,
which means
endlessly who don't know, which
screw with
probably
it.
do, the way he keeps tampering with his own films, keeps going in and changing things, and not for the better.
He must have gotten Spielberg's ear and said, "Oh, we got to change this so it all makes."
Oh, I'm sure he did. And Spielberg's like, "Nope."
Well, Spielberg did, though, right? He changed.
Well, he learned his lesson with E.T.
Guns and E.T. with
and
the
he's
walkie,
like, "Never again, never again."
Yeah.
So
that's when George Lucas is a bad influence on people.
Wow.
All right, let's talk the stats. Then we'll get into the fun and games. This was released, if you didn't know, June of 1981. 42 years young. This film, directed by Steven Spielberg, story by George Lucas, and then George Lucas and Philip Kaufman, or mainly Philip Kaufman, had a lot to do with the script. $20 million budget and a $389 million box office. And believe it or not, the studios were griping about spending $20 million.
yeah,
They did not want to fund this movie. They're like, we don't want to spend $20 million on a Spielberg film because at the time, if you can't believe this, the two things will start here. Number one, Lucas at the time did not have the money to bankroll this. And this is 81.
Just done Empire Strikes Back.
I don't understand that, but okay. Number two, at the time, even though Spielberg was 3 movies in from Jaws, he was known as going over budget and over schedule.
Yeah, he had quite the reputation.
So between those two factors and Spielberg's previous film, 1941, although it made money, was a critical failure. People did not like that film. But anybody ever see 1941?
I did.
I have
Not you. Yeah. I know you did, of course.
Sorry. I'm a person. I'm here. Okay.
You and me don't count because we,
okay.
We're gonna put it out to the population at large if they ever saw this dud.
I have not.
It was with John Belushi, Tim Matheson. It was just a disjointed mess. So after that, believe it or not, and it's hard to believe this about these two people, there wasn't a lot of faith in Spielberg going over budget, over schedule, and then he had basically his previous film was a turkey because it came out after Close Encounters.
Right.
So he did Jaws, he did Close Encounters, then he did 1941, and now in 1981 they're trying to get this film off the ground, and there's actually not a lot of faith in it, which
well, to be fair, the studios were looking at what they were planning to do with it. The set pieces alone, they were like, "There's no way you can make this for $20 million. It's too big." And of course, there were a lot more set pieces that didn't actually end up in the movie. They kind of spread those out into the last two. But yeah, they're like, "There's no way you could do this." And Lucas was adamant and said, "Yeah, I think we can." So they took it to Paramount, right? And Paramount said, "Okay." They believed it. So
with some concessions, Paramount said yes. Well, one of the reasons why studios did not want to take on this film is because Lucas is like, we want all the residuals. We want you have no creative control, and we want all the merchandising.
Yeah.
And the studio's like, okay, yeah, hard pass, my friend. So then he did take it to Paramount. They did kind of hammer out and did give some concessions. And then we have what we have. So let's start with the prehistory of Sean. You were telling us earlier about when you saw this film as a quite the young whippersnapper.
Yeah, no pun intended there, right? I saw this.
They used to call you Sean Round.
Yes, exactly. I saw this in the theater. What's 81?
Eric is grabbing his head.
Yeah.
Go back to Jack
I just
Nicholson.
got a brain freeze with that one.
Yeah, that was a little rough.
Come on. Not that bad.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry, Sean. We're interrupting you.
No, that's okay.
Go ahead.
I guess I was in first or second grade when this came out. And when I saw the coming attractions, I was like, Han Solo is Indiana Jones. Like, it was like I almost felt like these people were making movies for me. I was like, I need to see that. I have to see it. My dad took me and one of my friends. I think it was two dads took two of us. And man, I was blown out of the back. I couldn't wait to go at home and play Indiana Jones, like with my friends, and just pretend to be on these adventures. It was amazing. Like, I think as a 7-year-old, it was more like dialogue, action. Like that's, it's like whatever. Oh yeah, he's back. He's got the whip. He's running from the natives. He's, the boulders chasing him. It was all about the action for me.
Yeah.
And I was hooked, and I had the action figure. There he is.
There he is.
There he is.
Making his triumphant debut from Sean's collection.
Still there. No whip, no gun, unfortunately, but yeah.
Cool. Jerry, what about you?
I remember seeing it with my grandparents, and there's two things that stick in my mind. I remember my grandfather covering my eyes when you see her back, when she's changing when Marion's changing the dress.
Scandalous.
And I was like, okay. And then much the same thing. I always loved the action, and it's always stuck. When my grandparents had a summer house, and I had this, it was like a replica type of whip. And I used to whip it onto this branch and swing until the toy whip snapped and I destroyed our shed because I went through the shed. And I wound up in bed for like 2 days because I severely hurt my back. And despite that, I've always loved the action of Indiana Jones. Watching it just recently for this was the first time I actually listened to the dialogue.
Yeah.
I was all about the action.
Yeah.
For like they could have said nothing and I would have been fine just with the dialogue.
In true indie fashion, Jerry crashes through the shed.
I got
Jerry,
a lot
it's Jerry.
That's
it's not the
hardcore.
years, it's the mileage.
I got in a lot of trouble for that too. One, for breaking the shed, and two, for doing something so stupid like swinging, using a toy whip.
Yeah, a cheap ass whip. Christy, what about you?
I don't think I saw it in the theater because I think I was like 5 when it came out. My first memory of it is it was our first VHS tape, and I don't know if you remember the first VHS tapes. All the credits were on the front, the picture, and it was like a huge moment because we bought a VCR and it was the first VHS tape, and so we watched it over and over again because I had 2 older brothers, so it was constantly on. I didn't see it in the theater, and again, being a girl, I was not putting a whip on and doing any of that, but
you're a girl.
But what'd you say? What'd you say?
Nothing.
Eric, what about you?
Yeah, I'm done.
Well, she didn't finish her thought.
Oh, she didn't finish?
But I remember being intrigued by Harrison Ford just as a. Like I remember just looking at his outfit and his boots, and it was. I liked the way he hopped on the stones, like in the beginning, to not let the darts get him. And there are times even when I'm running on trails and there are stones you have to I always think of Indiana. Yeah. I always think of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Anytime you have to hop on stones, Indiana Jones is in my head.
He was the first trail. He was the first trail runner.
He was the first.
Yeah. For us, sure. Eric? Why not? Right? I mean, we were all enamored with that sense of action. I remember seeing it. I saw it with a friend of mine and his mom. And I distinctly remember, after the movie was over, of course, and of course you have that end scene, walking out of the theater, and she totally embarrassed her son by screaming on the top of her lungs, "You don't fuck with the Lord," because she was Jewish, and so she and he was like,
she took a totally different message from that film.
Dean, you know Glenn, so my friend Glenn. Yeah. He has this tremendous red hair and freckles, but he turned like a deeper shade red in the parking lot of. He's like, whoa,
he went super ginger,
because she loved the film and then I went back to see it again with my parents and my sister, and I was a little apprehensive to see it, frankly, because I was like, I wanted to see everything up to the end scene, because the end scene just freaked me out when the first time I saw it. I actually had nightmares, like I think a couple of nights after, like it was just because I just didn't expect it, because it just turned into a horror movie, right? So And I'm like watching the thing and I'm waiting for this scene. I'm just dreading the end to come. I'm like, oh, you know, like, but I loved everything else about it. And my mom was cheering when he's like, you know, under the truck and that whole bit. And she's like, yeah. And of course, when the movie ended, my dad was like, what is he, Superman? Is he doing all this stuff? Like, come on. Like, but he knew exactly what it was because he went to the theater to see this kind of stuff when he was a kid. Yeah. Those old Republic cereals and stuff that it was based on. So he knew exactly what it was. So he was just being, you know, like I am with Stranger Things, you know, being like, being the grump, like, oh yeah, back in my day, you know, we had this, you know, that was, you know, that was my experience with that. But then, like to Christy's point, yes, it was our very first VHS tape. Sorry, when we first got our VCR, and it was the first tape that we actually bought. You know, because back then you couldn't buy movies because they would cost like $100, you know, because you waited for them to come off rental. But yeah, and again, like the family would come down, we'd watch this thing over and over again. So yeah, you know, it's just, it has that same appeal, it seems, for everyone. So
I think it was, you know, Harrison Ford was kind of, like Sean said, it was like Han Solo.
Yeah.
You know, he was the swashbuckler from Star Wars. He was cool, calm, collected. So now he gets his own movie. He's not a co-star or a supporting character.
Yeah.
And you get to kind of see, and Sean kind of hit it also. It was more of like a real life adventure. It was something you could pretend to do that was more realistic than playing Star Wars or Star Trek. You have to pretend you've got a laser gun, but with Indiana Jones, you can go out in the woods.
Yeah.
And run around and pretend you're getting chased and slide down a hill and it's
off.
More realistic to what the film is because it's you know, it takes place on Earth. When Eric and I saw it and our friend Johnny saw it, you know, it just upped the ante from our Star Wars mania. You know, we were a little bit older, right? We were 5 or 6 years older, so we were kind of teenagers now. Mm-hmm. So more aware of films and kind of getting into stuff. So we were able to kind of absorb it less from Sean's point of view of, oh my God, this is this big action thing of sitting down and watching this movie that had those elements, but it had great characters, you know, the action pieces. We went as so far as to, I don't know if it was Johnny or Eric, but one of them bought the script back in the day. They bought the screenplay.
We both did. They sold it. It was like the illustrated screenplay. It had all the storyboards in it. Wow. And it had the complete script of the film. Yeah.
So much like Jerry did in his Few Good Men episode, where he said on the bus trip they were kind of going over the script. Yeah. We actually, during our lunch break in school and during study hall, we would go to the library, the three of us, and we would sit around and we would actually read this. We would like kind of do a table reading of the script. We would. Yeah. I think I was like Sala. I was like all the minor characters. I was like Sala. I was like the Alfred Molina character. I was all the side ethnic characters.
I was the Nazi guy. I was all the bad guys, I think. And I think Johnny was indie.
Yeah, and there was a measure of kids that would come into the library and make fun of us, and then there was some like, "What do you guys do?" or would make fun of us. Then all of a sudden, like the next time, it's like, "Oh, what are you guys doing? Like, what's going on?" Or, like,
they would join in, right?
Yeah.
You know, we give them a part.
We were that much into it, you know, because it was really, you know, that's when we were kind of moving away from being a young person watching film to someone getting into filmmaking and enjoying the whole experience of not just the action pieces, but the characters and the different, like Tote and all these side characters are so well written, you know, that's what also enhances this film. I think is that it's not just, Harrison Ford carrying this film. There are so many side characters that make up this world that really make it interesting for him to play off of in different ways. So
I also
just a little prehistory. I was wanting to jump a little prehistory before we go further. This was originally conceived by George Lucas as early as 1973.
Yeah.
Okay. So he had this idea boiling around, percolating. Again, like Eric said, inspired by the Saturday morning serials of the 30s, 40s, early 50s. Where each week you'd go to the theater and watch another chapter of it, and it would leave you with a cliffhanger, so you'd come back. And that's where Star Wars came from too, because he was inspired by the Flash. He couldn't get the rights to Flash Gordon, so he proceeded with Star Wars, but was still working on Indiana Jones at the time, called Indiana Smith.
right?
Where they kind of we need to ditch the Smith, like we need something else. Working with Philip Kaufman, who's a maverick director, screenwriter, over the years fleshing out this character. Just kind of really kind of working on it. So this is not something that they came up pretty quick. This was kind of percolating. And, that's the great thing about George Lucas is he's an idea man.
Yeah.
He doesn't always execute his films the best way as far as a director, but as far as an idea man, he's got all this stuff in his head that he's working on.
Yeah. Him and Kaufman were developing it was Kaufman's idea to come up with the Ark of the Covenant, the MacGuffin in the film. And then as George aptly puts it in the making of Doc, he's like, yeah, and then he went off to do a Clint Eastwood movie. Well, that Clint Eastwood movie happened to be Outlaw Josie Wales, which he wrote and was supposed to direct, but then Clint came in and took over the directing chores on that one. Yeah. But George is like, oh, he just did a Clint Eastwood movie, because he left my thing, to do that.
Yeah, because he wanted Philip Kaufman to direct Raiders.
Well, I think he wanted to write him to write the script, and then they gave it to Lawrence Kasdan, who had just done Empire. And I think the story goes where the original screenwriter for Empire died because she was, she was elderly. She was working back in the 40s on like war films and that kind of thing. And she wrote the screenplay to Empire, but then she died of cancer. And then he brought in Lawrence Kasdan to do it. And he's like, well, if you could write this script, I'll give you Raiders to do. And, I'll give you that assignment as well. But if this script isn't good for Empire, the deal's off. It's,
no pressure.
No pressure. Right.
Just write the second Star Wars film. No pressure.
Yeah. But Spielberg
that everybody's waiting for.
Yeah. Spielberg had bought a script off of him called Continental Divide, which was another film.
John Belushi.
With John Belushi. That was one of the very first Amblin movies, like Amblin Studios that, Spielberg's production company worked on. So he had bought that script, so he knew he was a talented writer. But for something like this, I think a lot of what this movie does and what it achieves is due to his writing. There's no doubt about it. I think it's a lot of the dialogue. He got the balance right. He got the characters right. I think it's the best written Indiana Jones film by far.
Oh, absolutely.
In fact, I think it's one of the best scripts of the genre ever written because I think it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So. And I think the casting is important. And let's talk a little bit about some of the contenders. Harrison Ford was not the first. He was actually not even really in contention. The reason why Lucas specifically did not, Lucas wanted somebody that was relatively unknown, and he did want Harrison Ford because he didn't want to feel like, that he was relying on Harrison Ford for stuff, because he was so iconic in the Star Wars thing. So I'm going to run through and try not to laugh, but I'm going to run through some of the actors that were originally considered for the role of Indiana Jones, and then one that was actually signed before Harrison Ford. In no order, Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's laughing already. Bill Murray, Nick Nolte, Steve Martin, wild and crazy archaeologist. Chevy Chase, I cannot see that whatsoever. Tim Matheson, who Spielberg had just worked with in 1941. He was actually the voice of Johnny Quest. I don't know if you remember the show Johnny Quest. Tim Matheson as a child was Johnny Quest. Nick Mancuso, he was like a late 70s, early 80s actor. Really didn't kind of come up with much. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite actors, Peter Coyote.
Yeah.
Who would appear in E.T., oddly enough. Jack Nicholson was considered for the role of Indiana Jones. No, see, I didn't do it. Jeff Bridges, that could have been interesting.
He would have made a good one. Yeah.
John Shea, who was another kind of late 70s, early 80s actor. Sam Elliott.
Okay.
He would have been your hands off me, you son of a bitch.
Okay.
That's from Tombstone. Harry Hamlin, right? Who at the time was
the Titans.
Exactly. He was kind of looked like Jim Morrison. He could have been like that. Yeah. Tom Selleck was the choice.
Yes.
Tom Selleck was chosen for the role of Indiana Jones, ready to sign him. He had started filming a TV show, and this is I guess what we call the Pierce Brosnan effect as well. He had a show that was kind of starting up called Magnum P.I. Once CBS got wind that he was being considered for this film, they said, "Oh, you know what? We're going to start making the Magnum P.I. So we need you to sign a contract." Took Indiana Jones right out from under him. Could have been What do you think? What do you think, Christy? Close contender? Tom Selleck could have done it. Jerry shaking his head no.
It's hard to see it. It's a sliding doors moment for him though. It also happened with Don Johnson with Miami Vice, but I can't see Tom Selleck. Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. I have a hard time seeing Tom Selleck do it. I guess he could have done it. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sean? What is it about Harrison Ford?
He had enough charm.
I think he'd look good in the hat, the jacket, but the stunts and everything, like I can't get anybody else but Harrison Ford out of my head for that role.
Nobody could absorb the punishment that he does.
Yeah, no. I mean, I look at Tom Selleck and he's funny. He's got the charm. I wasn't a Magnum PI watcher, so I don't know with regards to stunts. So I can't speak to that. But I just see Harrison Ford as that's emblazoned in my mind. That's it for me.
Jerry?
Tom Selleck feels too pretty.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford kind of is, he's the Han Solo. He's like not every man, because every man would want to look like him, but he just kind of you look like he could take a punch more than Tom Selleck does.
Yeah. Fair.
I'm going to reference a film called Quickly Down Under.
Tom Selleck is better looking than Harrison Ford? Jerry?
It's a different look. I mean, I don't see Tom Selleck running away from a bullet.
Tom Selleck's a really good looking guy. Yeah, he might be better looking than
Yes, but it's
Harrison Ford in this film.
To Jerry's point, he's pretty.
That mustache.
Ford has the ruggedness, the sex,
Harrison
different type of sex appeal.
Has a great deal of sex appeal. As an adult, when I became an adult watching
it's different than.
You were a child. It was wrong, and you knew it.
Which always.
Wow, that was great. Danny, you just redeemed yourself.
Listen, let me advocate. Let me just advocate.
Just
say
you're sorry, Dean. All I want to hear is you say you're sorry.
Watch a film called Quickly Down Under. It's the closest you'll get, and Tom Selleck plays, kind of a Western-y character. He did a lot of Westerns back then, but Quickly Down Under would make a decent case. You might be able to say, you know what, he might have made a decent Indiana Jones.
I'll go one even better. There was a movie called High Road to China that he did in the 80s with where it was sort of like an Indiana Jones type feel, where he was a World War I pilot, mercenary kind of thing. So I think that was his
their attempt at it.
Indy, I can, I'll do this.
It was their apology movie.
Right. Same thing with Danny DeVito, because they wanted Danny DeVito to play Sala.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
But then he would go on and be.
So you get Jack Nicholson as Indiana Jones, and you get Danny DeVito as Sala. You've got a cuckoo's nest reunion. What are you going to get? What are you going to get? Christopher Lloyd as Belloc?
There's no doubt. There's absolutely no doubt that's where that came from, right? And guess what? So? Michael Douglas cast Danny DeVito in Romancing the Stone.
Yeah.
So so Danny DeVito got to play that kind of character. The sort of, the comic relief character in that film, which was, again, very much inspired by.
It would have been too goofy. Sala was too important of a character. He was really like an information dealer. And I don't know that Danny DeVito could sell that. Even back then they did have like Caucasian people playing those characters, but you needed something a little more exotic. And that's the great thing about this is there's so many different types of characters. Even Alfred Molina in his debut, like Doc Ock, still working, was a young guy with tarantulas on his back, and Paul Freeman as Belosh or Belloc. Belloc.
Good Lord.
You need these great character actors to fill out this world. To give Harrison Ford that support, because he still wasn't. I mean, he was still just Han Solo. He hadn't done The Fugitive yet. He hadn't done the Jack Ryan stuff yet. He was still kind of.
He wasn't a star yet.
Yeah, he was still somewhat of a gamble. I think this one is the one that kind of blew him out. I think so. Totally.
And he was
willing to sign on for sequels too. That was another big thing. Is they needed to secure somebody that would sign on for. At this point, they knew that it was going to be a multi-picture deal. And he's like, this seems like fun. I'll do it.
One of the reasons
I think this is like
one of the reasons Lucas also didn't want to cast him is because he didn't want it to be like Scorsese with De Niro. He already saw. He didn't want it to be like, Ford's Lucas's boy, and that's why he was very hesitant in casting him in this.
That's right.
So, I mean, funny little Harrison Ford story. It's an aside, not much to do with this, but Michelle Phillips, one of the singers of the Mamas and the Papas.
Oh yeah, I heard the story.
The first time she saw Star Wars on the big screen, and she saw Harrison Ford, she says, "I know that guy. That's my pot dealer."
Oh boy,
yeah. I remember seeing there was an old show.
Harrison Ford is a known stoner, so it was kind of like, and I guess before, he was still like, he was doing carpentry. He really wasn't. He was kind of acting part time. So I guess in addition to the carpentry, he had some other side hustles.
See it. I could totally see it because I saw him. It blew my mind, and this was years after. I mean, we're talking like I saw this in the 90s sometime. Like if they were showing like old shows, and they had this old remember like Barnaby Jones, like those Quinn Martin, like Streets of San Francisco. But it was a show with Burt Reynolds, and I think it was short lived, and he was a cop in, I think it was California or LA or whatever. And Harrison Ford was a hippie in the episode.
Oh wow,
long hair, the beard. I'm like, is that Harrison Ford? I'm like, holy shit, he still looks good though. I mean, he's the man. Like,
Yeah, I think he got better look. I think in Indiana Jones, I think he had his teeth done or something like that. He looks a little different.
I don't know about that.
He looks a little different.
I don't think he's ever gotten, aside from him working out, like for Temple of Doom, he really got like ripped for that role. But then I don't think he's ever had any kind of that kind of stuff done, like cosmetic.
Probably a little nip and tuck here, I bet.
If anything, he, his nose got a little bit more bent and broken a couple of times because I think he really goes for it. People punch him, nobody gets beat up like
Tom Cruise. Yeah, he was doing it before Tom Cruise, really kind of doing his own stunts. And, I think that Raiders is the birth of like that super loud punch, like the punch that sounds like you're breaking through a brick wall. It's like,
you know what that is?
It almost sounds like a shotgun.
You know what that is? That's meat. They
punching meat.
That the guy that did Star Wars, this Ben Burtt who did the sound effects for Star Wars. He did the Raiders movies too. It's a slab of meat, and he's like hitting it with a baseball bat. That's just that real.
That makes sense.
Smack. Yeah. And so that it's like this pronounced
and gunshots that sound like cannon fire.
Yeah.
I mean that's what this movie really took those things to like the and it was supposed to be fantastic within the fantastic within the realm of what it was, except for the end when it got very supernatural. But up until that point, it's kind of this hero adventurer. Sean, do you think is Professor Jones the alter ego of Indiana Jones, or is the archaeologist adventurer the true identity, and the professor is the alter ego? Who's the Batman and who's the Bruce Wayne in this? Is he a teacher? Is he a professor first who does these adventures on the side? Jerry's saying no. Chrissy's saying no.
This is a really great question, by the way, Dean. This is a really great point you're trying to make here.
I mean, as a teacher, archaeology, that is not archaeology. I mean, it's so you don't just
X never marks a spot.
Yeah, that's it. You don't just grab things and take them away and push out like
that's stealing
1.5 ton bricks, and get out of a tomb. I don't know. For me, he was the adventure guy, because like I said, when I was 7, it was like blah 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 blah. Where's the action? Like that's him to me. I would say he's the adventurer.
What do you think, Jerry?
Oh, absolutely. I think he only had the professor job because he had to recover from getting his ass kicked half the time.
That was his downtime.
He had to have a reason to go.
That's a great point.
Had to have someone, pay the money, had to bankroll all of his adventures, and he could just hide it with, this is for the museum.
Right.
That's a good point. Right? Yeah, that's a really good point, Christy, that Jerry makes, because there's one scene when he's talking with Denham Elliott, right? He's like, I can get the $2,000 so I could fund going to buy the piece that he lost from Belloq in the beginning. So do you think that it's that but then that's that kind of leans towards him wanting it in the museum, right? As a professor.
Well, because he can't put it in his house.
No.
It's only a certain amount of
No
room.
one would know.
I think he genuinely loves the artifacts, so he wants them to, like, as the adventurer, he doesn't want it because he wants to sell it, or he wants it because he appreciates it. So for him, it's about the adventure of getting it and then getting it to where it rightfully belongs in his mind. I don't think that's the inner teacher of him. I think that's just the love of the adventurer.
Is it The Last Crusade where he's like, it belongs in a museum? Yes. And they're like,
so
here's
so do you. He's like, so do you.
Here's my take on the character, and it that's what I love Raiders so much, because he's completely ambiguous. I think he is. Belloq is right. My favorite scene in the film is when they're in the cantina, and Belloq is telling them, like, look, you're not that much different than I am. You know, you're just as greedy as me. You're just as, it only takes so much to get you. You think you're this, perfect guy, and you're not. And he's right. And Indy sees this. He gets mad. You see him getting mad, but he knows he's right, because it's the thrill of the hunt. And I think, Dean, you had made the point back when we were talking about Crystal Skull, how much you hated it. And one of the reasons
we all hate it.
Well, one of the reasons you hated it was because you felt the character, like his character, was helping the Russians find the skull. Like he was like looking at the map, and so my point is like he was back in the game. He is back in like he doesn't care. Like there's that streak in him where he wants, it's the thrill of the hunt, and he gets this for like in Temple of Doom, it's the fortune and glory. It's the glory of finding it. You have to ask yourself, is he really doing this to save the world, from the Nazis, to get it from the Nazis, or is he doing it for himself? I think he's doing it for himself, honestly, until the end of the film.
That's fair.
Well, in that same speech with Belloq, he says we are removed from the true faith. So meaning that, like, the pure archaeologist that would be with they're more akin to grave robbers at this point, right?
That's right.
They're going in, they're snatching these relics and bringing them back to the museum, but they're not really researching. They're kind of hearing about something from somebody else. Oh, this is here, or Forrestal, he tried to get it first, and someone else did. So, Belloq, you're right, Eric. Belloq makes a lot of good points in there. He goes, it would take only a nudge to, make you like me. So Belloq is kind of saying, you're on this high horse, but we're both chasing the same thing.
That's right.
I just happen to his Belloq's employers happen to be the Nazis, but Belloq is like, I you know what? They just happen to be the guy signing the check. Now, is that the right attitude? Not then, no. And then they have the Nazi monkey on the payroll too. So the Nazis were just paying whoever they could. They paid a little girl monkey to go around saluting the guys, and they're saluting him. Saluting the girl monkey.
This is why it's called Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's important. The title's important because it's not just about Indiana Jones. Everybody's looking for this thing. Everybody has a stake in this thing.
It's the race.
It's the race. It's like the Maltese Falcon. Everybody wants it. The greed factor comes in. Everybody Hitler wants it because he wants to rule the world. There's that at stake. But then Belloq wants it for himself. He wants the glory of having to open it before anybody else. And and in Indy, the same thing. But then there are other factors. Belloq takes a lot of shortcuts. He doesn't bother with the education. This is where the professorial aspect comes in with Jones, because he does have the knowledge.
Yeah. Belloq has the resources, so he doesn't need to. He could just get the Nazis with the tractors just to go in and just start digging.
He just happened to listen. He just happened to listen to his old man once in a while when Sean Connery is lecturing him about being more educated. It's what saves his life at the end, because he has that little bit of knowledge. And that's what puts it over the top right there for him. Otherwise he would have been gone just like everybody else, him and Mary, and they would have, bid it as, because Indy knew at the very end to say, don't look at the Ark, because he remembered that in his teachings, and that's, and of course that experience is, he's a changed man by Last Crusade. I think, that's why he's so much more cautious in Last Crusade. Like X never marks the spot, and he's a little bit more reserved and more into the schooling, that until he gets back into the game, into the hunt and the chase of it again. So,
Jerry,
so
if Indy was, when he has the rocket launcher, if he was really trying to stop the Nazis from getting it, he would have blown it up. Right?
True. Yep.
But Belloq says, you want this as much as I do, basically. Right. So, I mean, Christy and I were talking about how sometimes watching movies over and over can kind of paint them in a different light. Mm-hmm. Now you're painting Indiana Jones in a different light to me. Maybe he's not.
Well, look at Maya Bialik on Big Bang Theory. She totally and that's a valid theory that she has. That this movie really does not there's a point being made that if Indy hadn't intervened, or if Belloq hadn't taken that Ark to the island, World War II would have never happened. Because Hitler would have opened the Ark, and then that would have happened. He would have been killed.
It would have been done.
There would have been no World War II.
quick answer.
So when you think about that, it's like, whoa,
Whoops. Well, then we would if it wasn't for silly plot points, we wouldn't have a lot of movies.
Right.
Christy, what about Karen Allen? She's one of the anchors of this film. She doesn't come in until quite a bit in, but as a female lead, usually they're the damsel in distress. Her first scene is a drinking contest.
Yeah, and that's actually when I was a kid, one of the first scenes I remember, because I guess just because the only woman in the film, and so just kind of relating to her. But yeah, she's doing all these shots. She weighs like $110. And she's, putting this sumo guy, down, and then she's holding her own, and then Toud comes in with it's. She's great in this film. She reminds it set the way for like a Lorraine Bracco. We talked about this in Goodfellas, where you have this one female lead with all these men, and in a time period where women, we weren't so revered in film. You kind of can talk down to them, slap them around, or what have you. And she holds her own. She is phenomenal in this movie.
Yeah, usually, especially in the 30s, the equivalent of this film in the 30s, that female character would just always be in trouble and need to be saved.
Yeah. Tied to the track.
Exactly. Tied to the railroad, hanging off a rope or something. Sean, what do you think about that? Like that, why didn't they go with that? Why didn't they take that trope with them? Because they took all the other tropes of the 30s with them. The Nazis, the over the top action, the villainous Nazi, Toad. But meanwhile, then they have this female character who punches Indiana Jones in the face when she first sees him. She's mad. She runs her own bar.
Yeah,
she's an individual. She's not beholden to anybody.
Mm-hmm. I like it. When I was a kid, I probably wasn't picking that up as much. But when I watched it the second time, well, not the second time, the most recent time, I definitely.
Wait! You just watched it again only for the second time, Sean?
You know what I meant.
Get off this Get off this podcast.
I meant the most recent time.
Oh, okay.
And I took, it's. I liked her a lot. I remember just being as a kid, she'd be like, Indy, that's. But now I found her more attractive than I did when I was a kid, and I like Christy said, she holds her own. She's got the bar. She's drinking the guy under the table. She throws a punch. She jumps in the plane to try to help out when Indy's getting his butt kicked. And eventually, she does need to be saved. I guess they both need to be saved. So there are some moments where, I think she does. I think it's a nice balance where she's kicking some butt and also needs to be. I don't think it's totally one-sided. I think it's a balance. If you ask me.
And she hit the guy over the head with the frying pan when she chased him into the.
Yeah,
she kept grabbing. When I watched it just recently, like I watched that scene, she grabbed like 3 different frying pans. Like that was her weapon of choice. It seemed like. Yeah. He felt most comfortable grabbing a frying pan and banging people over the head with it. Like you could have grabbed anything else you could have grabbed. Probably picked up a sword off the floor, a gun that someone dropped, but she always went for the frying pan. That seemed to be like her most comfortable weapon.
I don't.
That's one of the great scenes in the movie too.
Yeah.
I don't think in any Indiana Jones movie he's with a submissive type of woman. Right? They all are a little feisty. They all have a little fight in them. They're just to some extent. I think Marion the most, but Indiana Jones has no use for a woman who just lays down and dies. Like I think that character needs that type of feisty woman who's going to punch him in the face because I think he likes it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you need someone that's going to go toe to toe with Indiana Jones. That's just as rough and tumble as he is. I don't think in Temple of Doom, Kate Capshaw, she was a little bit more of a damsel in distress because she was a movie star and don't break my nails, right, Eric? It was a little more kind of.
She was very Fay Wray.
King
very
Kong, much like that.
Always screaming, always. Yeah.
So it was, I think Marion was a very unique character because she was so, like two-fisted drinking, but still very feminine and still but could tussle with the rest of them. Didn't take any garbage. She certainly wasn't buying any of Indiana Jones nonsense from him.
Hiding a knife to try to kill Belloc when he gives her the dress. I mean, she's thinking ahead. Yeah. She's
she's clever. She knows how to take care of herself. But
that's a great scene when Toad comes in with the hanger.
Yeah, I love the hanger.
Spielberg actually wanted to use that in 1941 in his previous film. He couldn't get that in.
I think he did use it. Christopher Lee did the actual, but it didn't fly. It didn't land. The joke was not.
It didn't
there.
So they did it a second time where he comes in. He's got this black thing and he's like snapping it and Karen Allen, Marion's hiding behind Belloc and Belloc is like looking like what is this? And then he like just twists it and like hangs the and then they both and Belloc's face like Jesus Christ, like
these
what the
guys,
hell? What the hell is that? And Toad was really good. Ronald Lacey, you got to give him credit. He's an English actor. The casting or the character build was obviously inspired by Peter Lorre. Very much in that speaking mannerism, but he doesn't have a lot of time in the film, but he's just so menacing and just so really great, like that typical like smarmy, oily kind of villain that
he was scary. He has
a literal meltdown in the end.
He's a sadist.
There it is.
I was watching it with my 2 sons today, and they were
was
like,
that the Jeff Lynne?
Why is yes?
That's
now it's the indie bell.
So he's walking around in the hot sun with this long overcoat, leather overcoat, black. And it's like, why is he walking around like that? And I'm like, well, because he's
a Nazi.
He's enjoying the heat. He's a sadist in that way. Like he enjoys inflicting pain on people and, that kind of thing. So
he's always perspiring. I just think of him of sweat beating on his face.
He's actually
what shall we talk about?
He's actually an interesting character because as a kid, I was scared of him more than anyone. I just remember being scared of him and especially when his hand got burned. But watching it as an adult, he's menacing. But then at times, like when his hand gets burned and he's like, it's almost comical.
It's goofy.
There's a lot of takes you out of that menace a little bit.
Little bit of levity. There's little points of we don't want to scare the crap out of you. Like he burnt his hand, but let's bring it down. It makes the character be drawn a little bit more broadly. So someone Sean's age at the time can kind of not be totally terrified by it because there's that little goofy part that kind of that was kind of funny. Look at him dancing around and putting his hand in the snow,
And there's a lot of little moments like that peppered throughout the film. But that's the balance of this thing is so good. Like, for every lighthearted moment, there's a menacing moment the very next scene. And then of course, you always got the Ark as that black cloud looming over. Anytime anybody talks about the Ark, the wind kicks up or there's this really eerie kind of vibe going on. And that menace is always there. And then, of course, at the end, you find out why. But it's I love that about the film. It has a really nice flow of lighthearted moments and just great action, scary moments, and it's
and then drama and a nice exposition, like when they go see the Jerry, when they go see the kind of the guy that deciphers the medallion. Yeah, you see like the black clouds behind him. He's like sitting in like this room, and he's kind of deciphering it, and they're kind of moving the story forward. And Jerry, that poor monkey. Bad dates.
I never understood. They like the monkey though. Like
when the monkey was a double agent. If you didn't know.
No, I know, but
okay,
literally,
they should have. I don't know. I think they should have realized earlier on that the monkey was trouble.
It's a
monkey. You think so?
When he's,
but he kept leaving. The monkey would leave. The monkey would leave at inopportune points to check in.
And then,
like the monkey would just run away, and then all of a sudden, then come back. You know what? If you had a friend that did that would just kind of leave randomly and then come back, you would think, like, what's up with this person? But because a monkey does it, it's okay. You don't think You don't think the monkey's a Nazi double agent?
Monkey that's wearing clothes.
That's what is so brilliant about this discussion. Is like we're talking about a monkey
was applying to a circus. He had an interview. You don't know.
It was a she.
It
was a she.
So Dean, to your point, you made the point. So what kind of information do you think this monkey is handing over to?
It was obviously relaying something. There was some type of communication going on because
they wouldn't have found Marion without the monkey.
Well, yeah, because the monkey, because they were able to tail. They were wherever the monkey was, they were able to follow either Indy or Mary and see where they were going.
Yeah,
so the monkey would probably go back to the guy who actually played two roles. The monkey handler was actually one of the Peruvian guides in the beginning of the film. I don't know if you guys realize that.
With that riddled with darts and balls.
Yeah, same actor played the same character. His name was Vic Tablian. Mm-hmm. He played the Peruvian guy that got all the darts in his back in the beginning, and then he played the motorcycle guy. So what I think, let's stay with the monkey since Eric asked me.
That's just it's just funny. It. Like he goes back to check in and like I'm just seeing the monkey debriefing the monkey. Like
what I envision happens is when there's downtime, like when Indiana Jones is just hanging out or sitting around, the monkey leaves, finds the owner, and then walks back to where it like leads them back. So the monkey's kind of like inserting herself into the group of Indiana Jones, then would just disappear, go find her handler, as it were, and then walk back and show them where they were.
Wouldn't the handler be like, "Don't eat the dates. I'm going to poison them."
Nothing for nothing. They don't
you know what? There was a miscommunication there because whoever sprinkled that stuff on the dates maybe the monkey wasn't scheduled. Maybe it was her day off, but then she's working overtime. Showed up and said, "Oh, there's dates here. Let me grab one." I'm working OT. I may as well get some meal out of this. Don't you want, Sean? When you're working overtime, don't you want to get fed?
Yes. I'm not going to eat dates, though. I'm not going for dates.
Not ever?
No.
Because of Indiana Jones?
Not going to go for the dates. Because of dates.
No, just because of dates.
Why? Dates. That's why.
Another thing that I think is interesting about this whole like cat and mouse thing, like the basket scene and all that, is the fact that I always wondered when I was a kid, like, why aren't the Nazis doing the dirty work? They always got these hired thugs to do all the dirty work for all these like Arab extras and that kind of thing. And it just and my dad had to kind of explain it to me because we weren't at war yet.
Right.
World War II did not have, this was 36. So they couldn't walk into a country and start, murdering people on broad daylight.
They were still infiltrating.
Right. And that made a lot of sense. And it also explains the submarine aspect how did Indy because apparently he clings to the periscope at the end, the sub takes him to that hangar. And and I asked my dad, so how did he survive that? And then my father explained to me, because my dad was a big World War II enthusiast. He loved.
Well, in the novelization of the book of it, they explain that he wrote on the periscope. But in this, when they were writing the script, I think they brought that up. Say, well, we need to. People are, just like Eric said, people are going to ask, how did he survive?
Yeah,
and they were like, don't worry about it. They'll buy it.
Yeah, they'll say that, but I think
they won't question it.
But they'll say,
until now.
My dad, of course, Encyclopedia Brown, he turns around and says, because back in the day, again, they weren't fighting a war. It was a submarine, yes, but diesel-powered submarines at the time did not always submerge. It took a lot of fuel. It took a lot of energy to do that.
Wow.
So they would often ride on the surface or just right below it. They didn't dive deep because it took a lot. It expelled a lot of fuel.
It wasn't necessary.
Right.
Eric, you didn't tell me this beforehand. We should have had your father on as a consultant. For this stuff. We needed a fifth chair.
But I love this stuff as well. Like, Sean, you're a big, Revolutionary War buff, and I'm the World War II guy. So like movies like this came along, and I'm like, yeah, this is really cool because this is a guy that he's not. This isn't a war film per se, but it takes place during that era, and I just love that kind of stuff because I grew up with those kinds of movies as well, like those old, the Guns of Navarone. I used to watch those with my dad, and he would show me this stuff, and so. Yeah, I think Harrison Ford even did one like a year later. It was like
Force 10 from
Navarone.
Yeah.
Carl Weathers and Richard Keel, right? Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was
what a cast of luminaries.
Sean, really quick, Sean.
Robert Shaw.
Sean, really quick. Yep. Revolutionary War. Are they Burnsides or sideburns?
Well, it actually comes from the Civil War.
Oh, okay.
And Ambrose Burnside had the big mutton chops, and they called him Burnsides, and then it eventually reversed to sideburns.
See that?
I am learning so much right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you learned more about the monkey double agent than you did about anything.
I think it's a brilliant. I just love the way you articulated that, Dean. It's like he comes back and he checks in. I love the idea of that. Just it blows my mind.
Well, there's a whole. You got to understand. There's a whole other world going on besides what Indiana Jones is doing.
Oh, right? Sure, yeah, exactly.
Sala and his family, and he's taking care of that, and he's like working. That's and we make fun of the monkey, but that's the great thing about this film is all these characters.
I didn't make fun of the monkey.
Tote is not in it very much, but from the first scene he's in, you understand what he's about because he's grabbing the hot poker. He like you said, he's a sadist. He seems to enjoy this. He's What did she say? Like when he asked about the medallion and he's like, she's like, what are you offering? He's like something so much more, meaning your life if you give it to me. Like, like wasn't money. Like she was talking about money. He's talking about, well, you might walk out of this alive, So these characters are not in it for very long in the beginning. Even Indiana Jones, the first scene, there's not a whole lot of talking, but you pretty much learn a lot about it. But then you're shook because then it cuts to like a university. And then you see him in a jacket and a suit and a tie, and he's teaching. And again, he's teaching a course. He's not talking about anything. But you learn so much about these characters just by the world they inhabit and the other, with Mark and his relationship with Brody. That's more of a professional relationship. Even though Marcus knows what he does, Marcus is more concerned with what the the Antiquities group is going to get or whatever. Like they're like, yeah, they'll pay you, your normal thing or whatever. So there's so many different aspects and Indy works and weaves in so many different worlds, the underworld with Belloc where it's kind of shady and they're not really doing the right stuff. Like Sean said, they're not doing true archaeology. They're kind of grave robbing and who can get there first based on intel. But then when he meets with Sala, there's a different relationship. He's more familial. He's with the kids. He's putting them in the truck, and then with Belloc, it's more, we're on the same level. So there's all these different great, you don't really realize it until you start peeling it back a little bit more.
And again, I think it has everything to do with the writing. Kasdan just built those characters. I mean, you talk
like
about
Christy
world
says,
building.
It's the writing.
It's the writing.
Yeah, it's all the writing.
So, and Aaron Sorkin didn't even write this.
What's with the kid that leaves the apple for him? Because it's like, is he happy about leaving the apple on the desk?
When the kid that leaves the classroom at the end,
he's scared about it, and then Marcus just cleans the apple like we used to clean apples back in the day on your.
No, the kid's mad because he's the only boy in the class.
There you go, Jerry. You hit it right on the head.
They're in love with Harrison. They're in love with Indiana Jones.
Yeah, these girls don't care about archaeology whatsoever. They care about Harrison.
Wasn't
the
there
teacher
supposed to be a scene with Indiana Jones and one of I'd read something where one of his students, he was supposed when Brody goes to his apartment and tells him Yeah,
It was cut.
which
She
Yeah,
was
there's
in
a
bed.
girl there.
She was in
would
bed.
have said a totally different
Not a student.
air.
It's
Yeah,
the
student.
same thing as A Few
It was
Good
a
Men,
student?
right, Jerry?
Jesus.
Where they cut the scene because it
Yeah.
doesn't add anything to
Yeah.
the story. But he had a woman in the room, which is why he's
It would have
why he's
detracted
dressed like
from
that.
the story, I think.
Probably the girl, most likely the girl with the "love you" on her eyelids. He was probably
Yeah, that would
And
be
it wouldn't-
problematic.
Yeah.
I hope it
And it
wasn't
wouldn't
the
hold
chick with
up.
the apple.
Yeah. Sean, that would be problematic based on the conversation that Marion had with him. Like, I was a child,
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
wrong, and you knew
Yeah.
it. I'm like,
What's the
He was
age
young.
gap here?
well, here's the thing. In the original script,
Yeah.
they wanted her to be 11. And
11.
Lucas is like, no, you can't do that.
11.
Yes, Lucas is like, you can't do that.
And how much older is he in the movie? Because in real life, 9
In
years.
real life, they're like 10 years apart.
Yeah, they're
so
9
I would
years
say
apart.
it's like
Assume it.
it's like
Assume-
Han Solo and Leia.
yeah,
like 10
assume
years
it.
apart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Assume it's 10 years. So I think they said I think they in the backstory they said she was probably like 16.
Mhm.
In the story, not 11, thank God, because that you're talking that's a whole that's like a Roman Polanski film at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, 16
wanna
and,
get
this is-
16 and
problematic.
26 is not that much better, but
Well, this says something about Indy
like
too,
James
right? I mean,
Franco?
this guy, her father is his mentor.
He's got no scruples.
He's got no, and this is what they had. That's why they had a falling out, because he,
Jerry,
what
this
he did with his
movie's
daughter.
ruined
And
for you right now, Jerry.
yeah.
It
Sorry,
is.
Jerry, we're just tearing this down.
And then you look at Temple of Doom, man. Look at him in Temple of Doom. Like Indy's even worse, right? He's taking this kid along. This woman is completely out of her element, into danger. He doesn't sean to care
Brown.
because he just
Yeah,
wants to get the stones.
Temple of Doom, we're not going to land on this too much, but with Temple of Doom, the reason why they did that, they specifically said we need to make a different film because they didn't want to make another Raiders. Like they
Right.
said, we need to have this character grow. But I think it was a misfire. Sean, what did you think? Did you ever see Temple of Doom?
Oh, I have. I loved it
Okay.
because again,
Really?
I loved it.
I was 10, so it was like he's
They're going over the falls in a raft from
and
1,000 feet, and they land.
and that was the first video game I've ever conquered in an arcade. It took me forever.
Yes.
But I love that video game, so I love the movie. And I'm sure if I watched it again, like at this stage of my life, of course, I'd be like, but it still holds a place
Really?
in my.
When I walked out of that disappointed. Eric will remember. I was the lone voice of dissent. Him and Johnny.
You even from the opening title, you're like, it's too elaborate. What is that? Because it's like they had the actual font like come across the screen. All the other films has that.
It felt like they were going like the classic sequelitis is bigger and more,
right?
And it turns out that it didn't work, right? Because then they would go back to Last Crusade and they would dial it back and kind of brought you more into a story based element with the father son relationship. And it's rare that a third film in a trilogy can readjust like that. Usually when you go down that path, you just head downhill. They were able to course correct and really kind of use Raiders as a blueprint, but come up with an original story because you've got you have Henry Jones, and then there was the beginning part with the late great River Phoenix, who really embodied the young Indy. I mean, he got a lot of those mannerisms. He really kind of, when you're watching that, you're like, wow, like really what it was such a sin because River Phoenix was so good in that.
It was.
It just really, and then we would wait 20 years for
Crystal Skull.
Kingdom of
what
the
do you hate more, Temple of Doom or Crystal Skull, Dean?
I'd be honest, I haven't watched Temple of Doom at all. I probably right now will just say I like it better because Crystal Skull was such a disappointment. Everybody was so looking forward to the return of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And I went in there, I'm like, no, I can't. I'm not a homer like that. I just can't, like, it's not everything they do is awesome. I'm watching it and I want to be entertained. I'm like, this is just, nuke as soon as the fridge, like with the famous scene, nuke the fridge. As soon as that refrigerator got nuked into the air and 50 miles away, and he rolls out of it, I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. You lost me. This is like Temple of Doom going over the falls in that little raft, and they're going like 5,000.
Yeah, they finally took it over. That they took it that far. The films always lead, start to go there, but then they dial it back. But yeah, Crystal Skull really.
That's why Raiders was so great because it was the adventure was still reality based. there was puzzles to solve. It wasn't, he stepped on his thing and the dart came out like Christy said, and he had he knew that the idol had a trigger in it. So he's like weighing out the sand. Once you get popular, okay, well, we have to do that even bigger. Like how bigger can we go? It's like, you don't necessarily need to.
Well, it's like the snakes. We haven't talked about the snakes yet, right? So the snakes in Raiders, then you got the bugs in Temple of Doom, then you got the rats in Last Crusade, and then the army ants or whatever.
And the ants that drag away Kate Blanchett and drag her into a hole or wherever they butter.
So they definitely.
It's always bigger, more, and it's not necessarily better. It's just
but a lot of movies.
That's why Raiders is so special.
Especially franchises do that. I mean, that's
right. Of course, yeah.
But Sean,
but I think they learned that was the great thing is they were able to pull back.
Sean, don't rewatch Temple of Doom because it will ruin it.
You're going to say Temple of the Dog.
I was going to say of the Doom, or Temple of the Dog. Don't listen to Temple of the Dog while you watch Temple of Doom.
What's Temple of Doom?
There you go.
But Jerry and I were actually talking about
Eddie Vedder will jump out of your TV screen and punch you in the face.
There are certain. Like if the memory's better and you love it, don't ruin it. Don't
ruin it.
Don't watch it.
No, I love it.
Yeah, but you can't help now. Yeah, but you can't help watching it now with an adult.
Oh no, you definitely.
Right? You're
not if it's going to ruin it for you.
This is the advent of being a father. Of course, my son Jake's favorite is Temple of Doom, so I love watching it with him. That's the only time I'll watch it. Last Crusade is my son Zach's favorite because of the father-son thing. So I watch it with him. I was disappointed in Last Crusade, by the way, back in the day. Full disclosure.
You didn't care for it that much.
I didn't care because to me it was a rehash of Raiders. Take away Sean Connery, to me it just felt lazy and
the Nazis
the same story.
Yeah, the Nazis are
back in the desert. There was too many things that were too similar to Raiders in that aspect. So, but Sean Connery was the only reason.
Yeah, we named the dog Indiana,
and to me it was a comedy. It was a little bit more goofy. It was more, I didn't care for the beginning, the first 20 minutes. I love River Phoenix, but I didn't like the fact that you're basically telling this is who Indiana Jones is, but this based on this little misadventure that he has. Mm-hmm. That's where he gets the hat. That's where he gets the whip. That's where he gets the scar. All of this stuff in that one little thing. I don't think so. That's it's a little ridiculous.
You know that Lucas's dog's name was Indiana, right?
Yeah.
What?
So so I'm sure you do know this, but maybe Jerry and Sean don't. But so he saw his wife and the dog in the car, and the dog was looking at his wife, and he's like, he looks like her co-pilot, and that's how he got the idea for Chewie and Han Solo.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Wow.
His dog was like a big Malamute.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
no seatbelts back in those days either.
Are we going to talk about The Fly? Not the movie.
If you like to, on Belloc's lip.
When I was a kid, it still to
thank you,
this
Christy.
day.
One goes on Harrison Ford's face too.
This fly has got the most screen time of any insect in any movie because it's everywhere in this movie. I watched it today. There's a fly in almost every scene.
This fly?
Yeah.
Are you saying it's the same fly? It's a stunt fly?
It could be.
Well, was this the fly that went into Pence's mouth during the debate or on his head?
Oh, God.
That was on his head.
It's the same fly.
That's the great. I don't know how many flies
over a piece of casting right there.
You're talking millennia of generations.
They're like, get the fly. Great.
Oh, every time I watch this movie, and I think
does he swallow it, or does it just fly off his mouth?
I don't know.
He swallows it.
I don't know.
It does fly out, but they liked the thought of him swallowing it, and that's why they cut it so that it. And he said it does. It just walks in and walks out. But they cut it so it looks like he ate it.
Because that makes it look tough.
Bizarre.
I don't know. I didn't get that far in the story.
Because Belloc is such a jerk, I guess maybe.
Belloc is more like the intelligent, like he's more the intelligent, raider, as it were. He leverages resources. He's not the guy. He's not the guy that gets his hands dirty.
snatches the stuff out of Indy's hand and walks away. Like he doesn't. He's just like thanks and takes.
It's like once again we have proved there's nothing you can have that I cannot take away from you. It's like he's like, this is my job. Is you get it and I take it.
I just take it right out of your hand.
That's another reason why I didn't care for Last Crusade, because Belloq was already the perfect, what do they call it, the champagne villain.
Yeah.
Right. Because he's this, like sophisticated, always wearing the nice suits. And then you got this other guy, Donovan, who's not very much like Belloq was supposed to be. And he just fell flat for me. He just wasn't a good villain.
Yeah.
And,
he wasn't that important to it.
Didn't have the villains that they had in Raiders. I mean, Sean Connery and Harrison Ford Harrison Ford, by the way, carries all of these films. I could watch him.
Absolutely.
I don't care. Even Crystal Skull I could watch, because there are moments in that movie watching his reactions to things. He plays it so straight all the time, and he's so good. And it's very hard to do. I cannot picture anybody playing this role but Harrison Ford.
Eric,
they
do you
talk
know
about
why?
Chris Pratt. There's no way Chris Pratt can do this. No.
Eric, do you know why?
No way.
It's the writing.
No.
It's the writing.
I just think.
Well, I'll tell you, Crystal Skull had the scene of Shia LaBeouf like swinging with all the monkeys.
Well,
God!
All you needed was one monkey in Raiders.
Yeah, to me, yeah.
All you needed was one. You get the right monkey. As long as you get the right monkey, you need one monkey. You don't need a whole jungle full of monkeys to be swinging.
Double agent monkey.
That's it. I'm gonna go back to that monkey now. I gotta get a T-shirt. If anybody out there has a T-shirt of the double agent Nazi monkey, I'd like you to send that to me.
By the way, I thought that I hated that scene more than I hated the nuclear bomb scene. Believe it or not.
All those scenes were horrible. They were just awful. Yeah. It was just an awful thing. That the good thing is none of that detracts from how great Raiders is, and that's the thing is from the soundtrack, from the score from John Williams. It's one of my favorite scores, actually, almost more than Star Wars. That score is beautiful. It's a beautiful score. It makes punchy. The film. It's punchy. It's got the great, his theme just comes like when the theme, like you don't really hear the Star Wars theme in Star Wars when something happens. Like the Star Wars theme is a main title theme,
right?
But Indy has his own. Like when stuff's going on, you start to hear like the call, like da 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 da. Like it's like calling him to action. It's like it's coming. Like when you hear that fanfare. Even though it's the main theme, they pepper it throughout the film of here, like it's like the hero's call to action.
When we were kids and we were playing, we'd always go, dun, 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 dun. I get on my bike, dun, 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 dun. We would do that when we were running somewhere. We would that would come. Somebody would do that, and it would be just whether we were playing Indiana Jones or anything. That was like everything that summer.
The de facto theme.
For action. Did Spielberg repeat that in E.T.? Did the music play when they were on their bikes and they were doing things in E.T.? I don't remember.
Well, E.T. had his own, that beautiful, his own big score. Theme. But no,
when they're on the bikes, there's definitely something.
I think there's a theme that plays,
and it goes off into when they go up into the sky.
Well, there's that din 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 din, like that fast like.
But they didn't play it every time E.T. was on screen. Like whenever Indy's about to do something, like they fire up the fanfare.
Raiders is responsible for E.T. Because Harrison Ford's wife. I think didn't she write the screenplay with Spielberg?
That's right, Melissa. Yeah.
Wow, look at you.
Yeah, I'm
Harrison. Here's a side story. As we wind down, Harrison Ford is responsible for me liking Jimmy Buffett. Isn't that weird?
You smoked weed?
How so?
Well, you don't tell us why. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
So Jimmy Buffett made an album. One of his albums was called "Last Mango in Paris." And he had a song on there called, what is it? I forget what it's called, Halloween in Tijuana or something like that. And he wanted the sound of a whip on the song as a sound effect.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
He said,
remember this.
He goes, and he said, I don't know anybody that knows how to use a whip. And he's like, Harrison Ford knows how to use a whip. So he called Harrison Ford and said, can you come into the studio and crack the whip? Because you know how to do it. Because I need a whip sound. So when I heard that story, I'm like, I got to check this out. Like, I got to check this album out, And then, for that song, it was a novelty. But then I ended up getting into Jimmy Buffett, like going back and like becoming a parrot head at the time. But it was because like he hired Harrison Ford to crack the whip on one of Jimmy Buffett's songs in like 1989 or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know,
this has nothing.
Very strange, right?
This has nothing to do with the whip. But are we not going to talk about the
Aaron
scene?
Sorkin wrote A Few Good Men.
Are we not going to talk about the scene where instead of fighting the guy, he shoots him?
Oh, yeah.
Why he did it?
Of course.
Okay.
Wasn't he?
Why he did it?
Because they.
Anybody know why he did it?
Everyone had
sick?
heard
Why he
this
did it?
except for Spielberg. Everyone
Say
was
again?
definitely ill except for Spielberg, who ate SpaghettiOs, and Harrison Ford was just this poor stunt guy. He trained, and Harrison Ford's like, "Can I just shoot him? Because I don't have the strength. I just don't have it."
Right.
Which is and it worked probably better than any fight scene would have worked.
Oh, absolutely.
It became
it makes a lot more sense because he's in the middle of a chase. He doesn't have time to deal with this guy. It's much like Han Solo and Greedo. Like, it's either him or me. I ain't got time for this. And
it levels with his, it squares with his character, right? Because he's not going to pick up a sword and have a sword fight.
Well, it was supposed to be this big elaborate fight with the whip and the sword and this whole.
It works, like you said, it works better.
But yeah.
But
and he does it so like nonchalantly, like he's annoyed, like he pulls out the gun and just like, boom.
That's a scene I vividly remember as a kid. The audience just belly laughed.
That's the biggest
it's
laugh.
A perfect example of less is more. Perfect.
And then what though? And then right after that, when they throw the fake Marion basket into the truck, and Indy runs out in front and they're like spraying the machine gun, and he hides, and then the truck's coming and Indy comes out and like shoots the guy. The driver, he like domed him right in the head. Like a headshot as he's driving by. Like he just picked that guy off. Like you see the splatter of the head. I'm like, Jesus, and then the whole truck goes over. It's like, he's a pretty good shot. He's got the Cagney gun, more than 6 bullets per gun.
There's a flub in the bar.
Yeah.
When Indy's shooting, he starts out with a revolver, expends the revolver, and next thing you know, he's holding an automatic. 45 automatic. So he's got 2. Does he have 2 guns, or is that a flub? We don't know. Yeah, he's packing. Like he's got the.
Dean, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
He said, "Does he have 2 guns?" You're not going to do a Tombstone impersonation.
You can't call for it. You can't ask for it after it happens. If it doesn't
happen organically.
Yeah, you gotta let it go by. It's like a bus. Like when the bus passes, you don't try and chase it. You just wait for the next bus. So,
did anyone else notice?
He's got 2 guns, 1 for each of you. See, I did it. I just did it.
Yeah, Jerry, what?
In the bar scene, there's no music.
Right.
It's not that type of bar, Jerry. There's no jukebox there.
There's no.
It's Nepal.
It's like, is that why there's no score in the background?
Yeah, they couldn't get the jukebox up the mountain, man.
Which is another thing. How does she get her deliveries for alcohol?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a good business plan, to be honest.
Llama.
Good point. Yeah.
The Nazi monkey
pulls
the llamas up the mountain.
Here's an interesting thing. The raft sequence in Temple of Doom was supposed to be in that scene with Raiders. Like the plane was supposed to crash in the mountains above the bar. And Indy's supposed to come down that mountain in a raft and like just show up. Like the raft just comes right up to the door of the Raven, and he gets out and he walks into the bar. That's how that's what they originally conceived. And the minecart chase was supposed to be in Raiders as well.
Yes, I heard that.
So they cut those 2 scenes out. I don't know where they could have had a minecart chase, and what are they in the dunes? Like
probably underneath, maybe like in the in the dig or whatever. Who knows?
I guess, but I don't know.
All right, let's start to round this up. Let's go around the table as we do with our film ones. Favorite scenes. Eric, we'll start with you.
The scene with Belloc in the cantina. It's an exposition scene. It's a dialogue scene. It's not an action scene, but actually it is because there's a lot going on.
Yeah. In
that scene, if you notice, look at the people in the background next time you watch it. Watching Indy, have this little conversation with him. There's people looking at him with like side eyes, and one guy's pretending to be sleeping. And then in the back, there's like some guy handing a Luger to another guy being passed. This you can only see like in a widescreen shot. And when they came out on VHS, you couldn't see that stuff back in the day. But now it's like you watch it and it's like you see everything, and you would just watch the crowd around the table where they're having the conversation. That's such a great. There's so much stuff going on there. It's so sinister. That's probably my favorite scene in the film because it shows the characters and it builds, it's like I said, like, that banter between him and Belloq. So yeah, there it is.
Jerry, what do you got?
Mine's not so much a scene. It's and they use this part. It's when they're first digging for the Well of Souls, and it's got the sun behind him, and he stands up and he puts the hat on.
Yeah.
For some reason, I could watch it over and over. And then there's also in the bar, they use it 2 other times. They like to use that like shadow / silhouette type of thing. Like when Indiana walks in, she doesn't realize he's there, but you see the fedora and all that. Nice. And then even when the Nazi comes in, you see it. And for some reason, those shots I've just always loved. But the one with the sun behind him, it's like, it blows me away every time.
Yeah.
Cool. Little homage maybe to Robert Shaw, the shot in Jaws when he's standing on the edge of the orca. He's got the sun behind him. Christy, what do you got?
I think I'm torn between two. The opening, because the 2 scenes I remember as a kid was the opening scene, like when he's doing the thing before putting the bag of dirt down, and then behind him Alfred Molina's going. And I always remember, I like the way he walked on the stones, and he had to be so careful, and that whole scene up to the part where the boulder's chasing him out, and then the whole in the Pal with Marion. I just, again, probably because she was the only female character, just this introduction to this really strong woman who's like, who can drink like that and then like function. I don't understand.
There was another female character. She had "I love you" written on her eyelids.
Well, that's true, but yeah, no. The only female character with words.
Didn't have any lines though. Sean, what do you got?
Christy, you kind of stole my thunder, but that's fine. That someone was gonna. It was bound to happen. It's that opening scene grabbed me from the moment, the moment I sat down, and that scene, it just had me. It was everything. Like if that was the end of the movie, I would have been like, all right, that was pretty good. But it was, and I would say the second would be the, it might be cliche, but when he goes over underneath the truck, I mean, that's like my second favorite scene. I always like the parts where Indy's proud, like happy with himself, smiling, and the next thing you know, he gets like popped in the face or something like that. I always enjoy those kind of moments.
You're such a boy.
He gets that one moment of recovery.
He's like, and then bang, he gets like boom.
So I've got a favorite scene and a favorite shot. Maybe actually they're both favorite shots, but when I was watching it today, one of the shots I really love is when they have Marion in the basket and they're running through the alley. She's like, Indy. And there's Harrison Ford runs right to the camera, and his had to hit a mark.
Yeah.
And he had to stop because he runs right to the camera where it's only his eyes. Then you see it's the market full of baskets. When I watched it today, I'm like, how? Like was someone there to stop him? Because like he was running like full stride.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to kind of stop. It's easy to stop when you're running, but it's hard to stop your motion when you have to hit, like when they need your eyes to be in a certain framing.
Yeah.
In a shot. When I watched it today, I'm like, wow, like that, just from a filmmaking standpoint, that was pretty amazing. And then another shot or scene is Christy and Sean talked about him in the temple in the beginning. I'm going to go even further before that is his introduction scene. They don't show his face. You don't see who he is. He's holding like pieces of a ragged map together. And all you hear is like a little click of a gun, and his head kind of cocks a little bit. The whip, the gun, he turns around and it's like brum, 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 brum.
Yeah.
Like, and he's revealed for the first time. Like, what a great like intro to a character. It kind of really sets the tone of this is a takeoff on serials, and it's going to have that feel to it. But just what a great way to introduce the character from he's in shadow, you don't really see him, and then it wasn't, you don't see the whip, you don't see him handle the whip, you don't see the whip crack, you hear the cock of the gun, and then it almost like in Star Wars, you don't see Ben Kenobi slice off the arm of the guy in the canteen. You just see like that it happened, like it's like a flash of motion. This was the same thing. What a great way. And then that, like you said, Sean, like John Williams' score just kind of punctuates.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be what it is without that bum bum bum, like coming in, like just really like bringing that shot, like the music brings that shot home. It would have just been another shot without it. So I think that's going to do it.
Can I ask you a question?
For this episode of the 3324 podcast, Christy has her hand up.
Is it the writing?
Like a classroom.
Wow, I thought.
We recognize you? Go ahead.
Other than Harrison Ford and Sylvester Stallone, so
where is this going?
Ford has 2 very large franchises, and so does Stallone. Who else has pulled this off? Because Harrison Ford pulls off Han
Technically,
Solo.
Harrison Ford had 3 franchises.
Who
he had
does?
Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and then he had
Ryan.
Jack Ryan for a little bit too. So technically, he had 3 franchises.
I don't know. I wouldn't put, because there's been so many Jack Ryans. I don't know. I mean, how many? Well, he did 3, so I guess. But who else has done it?
He did 2.
No, he did Patriot Games, Clear and Present, and
Mahoney in the Police Academy movies.
There you go.
Steve Gutenberg.
Steve Gutenberg.
Thank you, Jerry.
Perfect.
Now that's a.
Shut her down.
Because he's got Short Circuit too, doesn't it? Short Circuit
And
also.
Cocoon and Cocoon too.
Was that Steve Gutenberg?
I don't know if he came back for the second.
So you're the question you're posing, and maybe you can let us know on social media, what actor has had multiple movie franchises? Yeah. So you're saying Stallone because of Rocky and First Blood, like the Rocky and Rambo. He's got 2. He's got 2 trilogies. Connery? No, he's just got Bond. Offhand, I don't know.
Think about it, huh?
Okay, I will.
I like it.
And you could think about it, everybody listening, and hit us up on 3324 podcast. 3324 podcast. That'll work at Instagram and Facebook. Let us know if there's got to be someone else that's got multiple film franchises. Maybe not Tom Cruise. He's only got Mission Impossible. He's never done anything else that's had more than one. So that's it. What's that?
Does Top Gun count as a franchise?
No.
It does. So that's 2.
It doesn't.
Thank you, Jerry.
Top Gun doesn't count.
Why? It's more than 1. It absolutely counts. It absolutely counts.
35 years apart, though.
So
That doesn't count.
what does that mean? Now are we putting a parameter on when you can make the film? What's that?
Is it a franchise now?
I'll give you one. I'm Eric.
Is he Jack Reacher?
Eric will.
Is he
Eric
Jack
will
Reacher?
Yeah, I like the first one.
Okay.
I'm talking about the movie, not the TV series. I've got a contender for Christie's crown, and Eric will appreciate
Keanu
that.
Reeves. There you go.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
You got
John Wick and Matrix.
John Wick and the Matrix.
I've got a better one.
And Bill and Ted.
Because there's like 5.
And Bill and Ted.
And Bill and Ted.
I've got one that's going to outdo all. I've got one that's going to outdo everybody.
Let's hear it.
He was the This man was the originator.
Jeff Lynne?
Of the multi-franchise film actor. Mr. Roddy McDowell did the Planet of the Apes series, and then he was in Fright Night and Fright Night 2.
Oh my God.
That's not count.
Oh, your God.
Does
No,
not count.
he is the first one. He holds the crown. And he was in the TV show, so he did a triple. Not only he transcended film, and he went into TV. He was in Planet of the Apes TV show. He did Planet of the Apes films, and then he broke out of that mold and did Fright Night 1 and 2. I don't know what you want.
Everything.
Winner.
Good.
He won. I declare Roddy McDowell king of the multi franchises. It's been done. It has been so decreed, and so shall it be.
I beg everyone to comment on social media about this.
Okay. After an hour and a half of Nazi monkey talk, we're going to wrap this up.
We ended on an ape.
There we go. See?
Yeah. And the primate family. Okay.
I think the monkey in Raiders is a direct descendant of the monkey from Friends. I think it's a great answer.
Tom Selleck was in Friends. It's all coming together.
There you go. The world's getting smaller. So,
well, it wouldn't be a descendant. It would be an ancestor. Right? His friends came like decades later, right?
Calling Charles Darwin. All right, we better cut it here because we are going to start talking about the evolution of man pretty soon. Neanderthals.
Mine part has gone off the rails.
Yeah, at the hour and a half mark, Sean Market, the rails have come off this. So before Jerry says something that takes us down the road, thank you, Christy. Thank you, Jerry, for your second appearance. Well done, sir.
My
and
pleasure.
Jerry
pleasure.
wanted to be involved in this one. Thank you, as always, Sean Grady. Sean's a regular now. He's not a special guest, and he's got his indie swag there for those watching on YouTube. So thank you very much for that. Again, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, 3324 Podcast. You know the routine. You're gonna hear it from a much better speaker than I in about 10 seconds when we play our end bumper. So for Eric, this has been Dean, asking you to take your Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark VHS and please be kind and rewind.